Good morning, afternoon, and evening. I know you're joining us from very different parts of the world. So hello, depending on where you're at the moment. It's great to have you with us. We have a very exciting panel today at the European Vegan Summit. I'm welcoming you as Miłka Ste. I'm a climate activist. I'm a just transition coordinator at CEE Bankwatch Network, and I have the pleasure of also being a member of Green Rev Institute's expert board. And today, on behalf of Green Rev Institute, which is a vegan think tank from Poland, operator and initiator of the largest advocacy coalition, Future Food for Climate, we are welcoming you here to our meeting, and it's going to be a very exciting one. We're going to be talking about leadership. We're going to be talking about feminism, about networking, and about synergy. The European Vegan Summit brings together experts from around the world, game changers for animal rights, climate, human rights, and a just, inclusive, ethical transformation of the food system. So this event is under the patronage of the European Parliament. We're going to be talking about the dynamic intersections of leadership, feminism, networking, and synergy. We're going to explore the vital role that these elements play in shaping a sustainable and equitable future for animals, humans, and our planet. And I am really glad to welcome you to embark with us on a journey to inspire change and foster a greener, more inclusive world. It's great to have you here, and I would especially like to welcome our panelists today. We have with us Rune-Christoffer Dragsdahl, who is Secretary General at the Vegetarian Society of Denmark and Regional Representative for Europe, and Director of Policy Initiatives at the International Vegetarian Union. He has a master's degree in anthropology, and I know he's very excited to be here with us today. So Rune-Christoffer, welcome.
Thank you very much.
The next person we have, thank you. The next person we have with us is Joana Oliveira, the board vice president and campaign manager of the Portuguese Vegetarian Association, AVP. Joana has a degree in economics and a postgraduate degree in management control. She joined AVP in 2021, where she's been coordinating, she's been in the coordination and development teams of many projects and campaigns, and I hope she'll tell us a little bit more about them today. Welcome, Joana.
Thank you.
The next panelist we have with us today is George J. Hayek, who is the founder of Lebanese Vegans and the first vegan social hub in the region. He's the owner of Hayek Hospital. He introduced the principle that the hospital serves exclusively plant-based vegan food. This initiative was introduced in March 1st, on March 1st, 2021, after a year of transition. In this way, tackling the root cause of many major chronic diseases and cancer. So not just treating the symptoms, but looking deeper into what is the root cause. Thank you very much for being with us, George.
Hello, everyone.
And our final guest for today is Philipp Ryf, co-managing director of Sentience. He previously held a senior position on the board and was part of the leadership team for the initiative to abolish factory farming. Philipp brings more than 10 years of campaign experience from several NGOs and political groups to Sentience and has been involved in the animal rights movement for over 15 years. Welcome, Philipp.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so we're going to go right into the debate, and we're going to try and see what role in developing leadership and developing networks and finding synergies between different movements our speakers today have experienced. And I would like to start, my first question will be to Rune. As the Vegetarian Society of Denmark, it works in international and EU coalitions. You put a lot of pressure on politicians to fix the food system. Can you describe how you see your leadership role in transforming the food system? And what challenges must we respond to in Europe now that we're seeing an increase in populist movements, especially critical of such attempts to change the food system? I will hand over to Rune now, so please go ahead and try and answer the questions.
Thank you so much for the question, Milka, and thank you again to the Green Web for organizing this summit again this year. So the question here that you're asking, I think, is I feel it goes really straight to kind of some maybe also a dilemma inherent for many NGOs, and that's finding that balance between our idealism and also how to somehow get things done. That's I think an eternal struggle in all idealistic movements, and I think what we have done here, part of it consciously, part of it maybe even unconsciously or subconsciously, just we had to do it, and then we realized later that's maybe what we did, was that maybe we would normally be seen, you know, of course, vegetarian organizations can be seen as, you know, somehow compared to the rest of society, considered a bit more extreme, somehow far from the mainstream. But we've seen that to actually get something done on the plant-based agenda, we needed to position ourselves in the center of it. And if you want to be in the center of things and facilitate that others can talk together, then you have to take a different position than maybe the position you were born into as normally, where you would normally be as an NGO. And that does bring dilemmas, because maybe you can have some people behind you who are feeling like, what, did you lose your values, your ideals? But in our case, I really think we took it upon us to bring others together. We started a network for plant proteins. We have so many actors meeting each other and talking to each other. And if you want to be the host and organizer of that, you have to be somehow moderate, because you have to moderate all the other opinions in the room. And there'll be a lot of arguments within that room as well. So if you're hosting that and to facilitate that, you can't be too much towards one end of the spectrum, because then people won't respect you as a host that treats most people kind of in a balanced way. And I think this goes through a lot of it here. That balance between NGOs and business, between also the consumer side and the industry, and also listening to farmers, but still representing, you know, something has to change. So I think that's part of my answer to your question. And then you can say then, as many people have heard, I think in Denmark, we got this fund for plant-based foods, and the National Action Plan for Plant-Based Foods that has been delayed for a long time. We'll be seeing the draft next week, finally. So these things, the fact that had happened in Denmark, then I think we have felt like, and this is also a delicate balance, I think, because we don't want to contribute to greenwashing Denmark. Denmark has a huge industrial livestock industry still, but these initiatives are still positive. So we do try to share that message in other countries, because that goes to your other question, I think, right? That there are populists, and even though we feel the situation is moving too slow in Denmark, well, somehow we are fortunate also. So I think finding ways to spread a bit of a message of hope that things can happen even in the most unlikely places, and that there are some paths to that. And what we concretely are doing now is to try to get some Danish politicians to travel abroad to meet fellow politicians in other countries and talk about it. Or in theory, if anyone wants to visit Denmark, they could do that as well. But I think that's sometimes important, and often actually conservative politicians might need conservative politicians to convince them. Social democrats might need social democrats to convince them. So ideally, we should pick politicians from these parties in Denmark and send them abroad, I think, because here it has, after all, it's a process where a lot of parties are now supporting this agenda. And I think really. Ultimately, again, the reason why we have somehow managed to get so many parties either actively on board or just being neutral is by somehow taking some of the tension out of this, by being kind of friendly, by using business arguments, freedom-based arguments, farmers' perspectives, and health arguments, health economic benefits for society as well, but doing it in a balanced way. So some of the right-wing parties have become either neutral or just only a little against it. And that seems, I think, to be the key in many countries, that we have to find, generally, we should talk the plants up. That's our experience, I think. Like, we have to talk positively about what a plant-based system can do, and maybe speak it. Unfortunately, it's sad, but I think in our case, there's a limit to how much we should talk about all the problems with the animal system. If we really want to convince, especially the right wing and the conservatives, we should talk more about the potential of the plants, I think, rather than talking negatively about the current system, although the current system is really problematic and there's so much bad stuff that could be said. I don't know if I talk too much, but I think those are my kind of initial words and reflections, at least from my side. I'm looking forward to hear what the rest of you have to say.
Thank you very much for that, Rune. I work mostly on against fossil fuels, so trying to bring fossil fuels out of Poland. So it very much resonates with me because we have the exact same dilemmas. We are climate, but sometimes we do have to talk with very diverse stakeholders, sit in the room and come to an understanding. And I think a lot of us activists working in very diverse fields are working very much the same like you, because I can see this also in the energy and climate sector of the NGOs. So yeah, I think it's very much the same. Well, let's see what Joana has to say on a very similar sort of, like looking from the perspective of your organization. So the Green Protein Project brings organizations together also and aims to make the EU I'm sorry, I lost my question. Yes, I found it. So it aims to make decision makers see the same sort of similarly to what Rune was talking about, that without fixing the broken food system, there is no climate and health debate. And I think this very much resonates with what Rune was saying a moment ago. Can you tell us more about this project and how it uses collaboration across sectors and national borders? So developing, I think, on the same sort of things that Rune is working on.
Yes, so thank you so much again for the opportunity to be present at this incredible event. So just to give you an idea, the Green Protein Project was created 2 years ago with a mission. That's to foster the transformation of the food system within Portugal and across the European Union by advocating for plant-based food production and consumption. So the project recognized that the current food system is facing numerous challenges, including environmental degradation, climate change, and public health concerns, and advocates that approaching replacement must be part of the solution. So we all know that meat accounts for nearly 60% of all greenhouse from food production. So we need to address it, but like Rune-Christoffer said, we need to address it wisely. So through the Green Protein, we follow an approach that involves political lobby, farmer support, educational workshops, and of course, many collaborations and partnerships. So we recognize that addressing the challenges that I mentioned requires a collaborative approach. And this is actually crucial for success. Like our experience tells us that proposals and policy-oriented documents that are co-authored or co-signed by many organizations are stronger at initiating discussions and actually changes in national European policies. So we believe that allowing inputs from different sources of knowledge makes the collective work much more powerful. It actually reinforces our political impact, but also boosts our credibility within the public, civil society, and the media. And so specifically through Green Protein, we actually established partnerships with environmental, vegan, vegetarian, and animal protection organizations, and they serve, let's say, as ambassadors of a common message at European and national levels. And for advocacy and political lobby in Portugal, we're partnering with 3 Portuguese environmental organizations with actually different views regarding plant-based system. But, well, again, we have a common message here. And 3 Portuguese political parties already delivered proposals based on the Green Protein Project to the Portuguese Parliament. Haven't been as successful as Denmark, but this is the path. And today I just had a meeting with the political party that has the majority here in Portugal, so that's great. And for advocacy actions in Europe, we're partnering with 4 European organizations. That's the Ryf Institute, Vegetarian Society of Denmark, Vegetarian Society of France, and Compassion in World Farming. And of course, it's important to say that we also connected to Eurogroup for Animals, European Vegetarian Union, more recently to TAP Coalition, and some other umbrella organizations and network channels that allow us to establish great contacts and learn so much to the extent of knowledge. So specifically along Ryf, Vegetarian Society of Denmark, Vegetarian Society of France, and Compassion World Farming, we just launched a report last week called Plant-Powered Politics. And this is just a short name. And it has 11 recommendations to the European politicians and decision makers. And this is very relevant step and an important output considering European elections and discussions at the Parliament, or the lack of them, about farm to fork, the framework for sustainable food systems, among others. So in this report, we call for recommendations that try to address different scopes, try to address economic outputs from a transition, try to address the decrease of health costs thanks to this transition. So, and of course, it actually we address animal welfare. So we try to understand how these things are connected, so we can answer questions from different parties, like Rune-Christoffer said, different committees, different members of different parliaments. So yeah, so and you can visit. You can visit the website Rune-Protein.pt, and you can easily access the report. So again, these collaborations are very important, so we can make our position strong, and we can actually learn with different perspectives and different inputs. And we are talking about organizations, but we value partnerships with institutions that we can call organizations as well. That's the universities, and we are, because they like this academic center that that can add a lot to a certain project. And we actually working right now we're working on a public opinion survey analysis with an university. We're organizing a roundtable to discuss public recommendations, political recommendations with another university. So we're very active when it comes to collaboration and partnership. That's a very important part of our work. And yeah, so we actually collaborate with political parties and decision makers as well. The first thing that I say when I get to a meeting with some decision maker is that I'm here to collaborate. I'm here to help, like free consultancy. That's what is happening. So yeah, I guess I answer to your question. That's it.
So Joana, do you think that there are places where you have to speak differently? I mean, I think you mentioned this at the very beginning, that you have to address things wisely. So how much does your message change depending on who you're talking to?
Well, it can change a lot, in fact, especially when we're talking about policymakers, because we have the most conservative and the most liberal. And we need to understand that the most conservative parties need to be on our side at least almost the time, because that's when we will get to the next phase of our battle. And so we need to make them realize that, let's say, Portugal and Europe, European Union, will be left behind if we do not make progress when it comes to alternative, protein alternative, because meat is not here to last anyway. It is natural resources business. So we need to make them see this is not about, of course, it's, well, I would like to talk about animal welfare with political parties. And that's, that's actually a discussion right now at European Parliament. But the most conservative parties, perhaps they would like to hear something else, and that's the reality. And yeah, like just what Rune-Christoffer said, it's difficult for us. It's a challenge, but when we collaborate with different perspectives, and you want so many people to be on our side, because we have we have something to fight for. The animals. We need to get there.
Yes, I think, I mean, it's very easy to say things like they are with people who know the same thing that you do and who have the same beliefs. While with someone else, you might have to present other arguments. I think this is what Rune was also saying. So we will come back to this topic because we have a lot of questions about this for Rune. But before we do that, I'm going to go through the questions that we have for all of the panelists, and then we'll come back to the questions that the audience has put forward. So we're going to move over to Georges, and you're the creator of the Lebanese Vegans Social Hub. You manage a hospital in which you've introduced a vegan diet. So tell us more about your activities and also about what was the reaction to introducing this kind of diet there? How difficult was it to convince people, or maybe it wasn't difficult at all? And how do you understand your activism and your goals in the activities that you put forward?
Sure. First of all, I would like to thank you for welcoming me and being part of this amazing panel and this amazing summit. And then back in 2014, I opened a modest social media account, Lebanese Vegans. It was right after I personally turned vegan. I turned vegan because I was exposed to the harsh reality that those industries, the meat and dairy and egg industry, they try to hide from us customers. So yeah, once I knew about all those atrocities, I turned vegan myself, and I felt the duty not to keep those information for myself, and I felt like I had the responsibility to expose those industries and to forward everything that I've learned throughout my research concerning this specific topic. This is why I opened up Lebanese Vegans. It was like a modest social media account, and then it grew up, and then I was able to register Lebanese Vegans as an official NGO. And back in 2021, after the unfortunate Beirut port explosion, we decided to have a local where we were able to gather all our forces, our activism in one place, in order for us to help the people in need back then, because as you probably know, half of Beirut was destroyed by this explosion. A lot of people were homeless, without any kind of shelter, not even mentioning animals as well. So we took the initiative to take Lebanese Vegans into the next level and to be an official NGO in order to be helping in a more efficient way the community over here. This is relating Lebanese Vegans Social Hub in 2 words. Of course, we can go back into details later. Now, for your second part of your question concerning the hospital, well, it was only logical for me to omit animal products from the hospital because, well, it turned out that all major deadly diseases and cancers, and lately more than 75% of pandemics that the world has been through are zoonotic diseases. Well, it was only logical for me to remove animal products, the source of our problems, the source of our pandemics, the source of our diseases, the source of number one killer in human being, which is heart disease with clogged arteries. And it was also obvious for me to remove animal products, especially meat, when the WHO, the World Health Organization, well, they classified meat back in 2015 as being carcinogenic, and to be more specific, processed meat as group 1A carcinogenic, in the same group of tobacco, causes cancer, and red meat, group 2A carcinogenic. So, I mean, the writings are on the wall. We shouldn't try to find like so many ways to say things that are obvious and talk about the elephant in the room that no one wants to talk about. I mean, there is no place for carcinogenic food in hospitals, a place where we are supposed to treat patients. I mean, we are not supposed to give them poison again. We are not supposed to give them food that has been classified in the same category as cigarettes, as tobacco. This is why once I took the decision and I announced it, I was very clear. I said that serving meat in hospitals is like serving cigarettes in hospitals. There is no difference whatsoever. Not to forget that not long ago, back in the 60s or 70s, hospitals used to sell cigarettes in their cafeteria. Doctors used to offer cigarettes to their pregnant patients. Well, I'm not waiting anyone to tell me what to do, what's right to do. The information are out there for everyone to see. Facts are out there. Studies are out there. Peer-to-peer analysis and studies are out there. It was more than clear for me to remove all the poison, which I relate to as animal products, in all the premises of the hospital.
Thank you, Josh. How was the reaction? Was there any negative reaction among the patients, or it was a quite, let's say, seamless process?
Well, actually, the process took me more than 2 years because I didn't want to do it like an overnight decision. I know that, well, people all over the world, and especially in Lebanon, they love meat and it's part of their tradition and culture. So in order for me to take such a decision, I should be clear in my communication. I should educate. I should, first of all, you asked about my patient, but before my patients, I should educate my staff, my nursing staff, the doctors. Believe me or not, doctors need a lot of education in this specific matter, the nutrition part. And of course, the management and administration staff, in order for them, at least if they don't want to adapt a vegan lifestyle or plant-based lifestyle, at least to understand why the management took this decision, and to be able to answer our patients' inquiries in this regard as well. So this is why the transition period took more than 2 years. During those 2 years, of course, we conducted intensive training, intensive education, seminars, conferences, documentary screenings. Well, everything that was like an asset for me to be able to push this new way of thinking, because at the end of the day, we were all raised with this idea that we need meat for protein and we need milk for calcium and so on and so forth. So yeah, it was of course challenging to do so. But well, at the end of the day, once you present everyone with facts, with studies, well, you don't leave much room to argue, So I always tell them in a funny way that, listen, if you have any complaint about why we remove meat from the hospital, well, you can submit your complaint to the WHO, and if tomorrow morning they remove it from the carcinogenic category, well, I'll be okay to reintroduce it again. But as long as it's classified and it's well clear it causes cancer, well, I'm really sorry. I cannot be offering this kind of food, which I do not consider it as food in the first place. All the cancers, all the zoonotic diseases, the pandemics that we are still going through, we didn't finish about Corona yet. Apparently there's a new strain and it's gaining more and more. So yeah, for all those reasons, it was a clear decision for me. For the patients as well, a lot of positive feedback that I received, a lot of people who, in a funny way, they were joking that if they ever went sick or had some kind of sickness or whatever, they would want to come to our hospital, because we finally are tackling like the root cause of the problem, not just treating symptoms. So yeah, the majority were positive about it. Of course, I had some resistance, not just from the public, but of course as well in-house from doctors, especially because they found it not really relevant. Whereas what's more relevant is the food that we inject in our body, and the diseases are actually a signal of what we are injecting in our body. So I don't blame them much, because the system is wrong. They studied in a system where they do not give them enough nutritional education. Apparently, they have like 1 or 2 hours per week of nutrition classes, and it's really a shame, because as I mentioned before, the source of everything that is happening in our health, if you want to talk health-wise, well, it's the result of what we're injecting in our body. It's like our body trying to tell us that, listen, what you are feeding me is wrong. Try to change your diet. So yeah.
Georges, I think it's still very much a part of the educational system, at least from what I can see. In my daughter is 9 years old, and when she learns about the food pyramid, it's very much still based on an outdated nutritional idea. So I think this is still a very, very important part of education, even from the very basic level of, primary education, secondary education, and then moving on into tertiary education. So I think it's a very important point that you're bringing here. We're going to move over to Philipp. So, I mean, you have a very interesting experience of organizing a referendum on the elimination of factory farming in Switzerland, which, as we know, wasn't as successful as we would hope it to be. So after this experience, a referendum that the whole world was talking about, what do you think the results show us when we look at the more detailed responses in terms of the gender, the genders of the respondees? Do you think in any way this is linked to a different approach among women, or not really? So how do you see this issue?
Yeah, sure. So maybe let me start with, as you said, the initiative wasn't successful. We garnered 37% of the vote, which is in itself, I think, is a success, because if you look at the vegan or vegetarian population in Switzerland, it's not even close to 37%. But when we started the initiative, actually, that was back in 2016. And when we started, we were thinking of 25% as a success. Because back then, we couldn't imagine that everything moves as fast as it does at the moment. So I think it is a very good sign that we actually garnered quite a lot of the population. Even obviously, I mean, it would have not outlawed meat as completely, but it would have outlawed factory farming in Switzerland, which is still very much a reality even in Switzerland, even though Swiss politicians like to say that we have the best animal welfare law in the world. during the campaign, by the way, we saw a video from a Sweden animal rights organization, and supposedly in Sweden they say the same thing. So it's not just Switzerland who claims that we have the best animal welfare standards. But yes, I mean, I think it was a big success because it was very well received. A lot of journalists actually were very positive. I think there was a big debate, obviously, in Switzerland, a lot of agenda setting, a lot of getting the facts straight, because a lot of people in Switzerland really don't know how animals are raised in the country. But yes, it was, in the end, it wasn't enough. And yes, obviously, there are some demographic divides, if you will. Actually, the biggest one is between the urban and the rural population. And this is something that I think is very much something that we have to really be aware of, that people from rural areas are just very much still of the opinion that urban people are arrogant in the way that they talk about food, that they don't really know where the food comes from, that actually vegan food is very artificial, or stuff like that. Obviously, that's not true. You can have very natural vegan ingredients, which are great. But that is really a big problem, that rural people, while not really having a better understanding of the system, believe they have, because they probably live near a farm, they probably know some farmers, so they believe that actually the urban population is just against farmers as a whole. But then if you dig deeper, actually the second biggest divide really is gender. So 44% of women in Switzerland actually said yes to the initiative, whereas for men it was only 30%. So this is quite a big divide. And it also shows a lot of cultural, still kind of stigma, or just cultural learning that we have as men, as women. I think meat still very much is something that men believe that they need, especially if they, for example, do bodybuilding, they think they need the protein, which is nonsense, obviously. And also just on a cultural level, I think meat makes you strong. Meat is something that real men do, stuff like that. So I do think there really is a big argument to be made that we really have to focus on gender. But last but not least, I think the third biggest divide was just the age groups. So younger people are more susceptible to vegan foods. They're more susceptible to change. The effect is not as strong as I would hope. It's not on the level where you really are like, well, it's just a matter of time, because young people, obviously, they have different reasons for saying no to our initiative. They are on low budget often, so they don't want meat to get more expensive, stuff like that. But we still see that effect. So older people are more likely to be proponents of the status quo, while young people are more progressive.
When you were preparing for the referendum, how did you think about targeting, and how would you change this if you were to organize something similar in the future, seeing these results also? I mean, you must have been thinking about, analyzing the data, seeing where are potential areas for maybe strengthening the message. So how do you see that?
Yes, we did think about that, and obviously something that we thought of quite early was that we need some really manly men as ambassadors, which in a sense is kind of absurd, because like I said before, men are part of the problem. But then who better to speak to them than someone who's considered a manly man, or who's considered a farmer maybe. So we did try to focus on farmers as ambassadors for our initiative, and we did succeed to some degree. But then this goes back to the first point, due to the fact that the divide between rural and urban areas is so big. Most of the farmers that were proponents for our initiative actually weren't willing to to support us publicly, because they were afraid that other farmers would threaten them. We had a similar initiative a couple of years earlier that had nothing to do with meat consumption, but just with progressive agriculture. And there it was quite, it became quite ugly. So people got death threats and stuff like that. So a lot of farmers actually weren't willing to speak out for our initiative, which is a pity. Yeah, but I mean, beside that, I think we really tried to focus on women from the start, because while we did try to have those ambassadors specifically geared towards men, we did realize that we need to get the women vote as much as possible. So we tried to tell positive stories, and we tried to tell stories of how our initiative would actually benefit the image, or just get the system to be in line with the image that we have of Swiss agriculture, which is still to this day, the image is just cows in the mountains, and I think that's the same image that people from abroad have. And I mean, there is a small part of it that is true. I mean, you do see cows in the mountains in Switzerland. It's just the very few animals that you see, and obviously all the other animals you don't see. So we try to kind of leverage the narrative that there are some good farmers that do good work, but the system is broken and we need to change the other part of it. And yeah, I mean, supposedly that worked because the women really were much more susceptible to our narrative. And also, by the way, we did a lot of online marketing or online campaigning. And actually, obviously, there may be some confounding factors with age, but around 50% of people who said after the vote that they mainly got their information online said yes to our initiatives, while only around like 28% of people who mainly got their information from like newspapers. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I think that's also interesting for us campaigners when we're trying to, tackle our issues with the general public. So thank you for that. Rune, you actually have a lot of additional questions. So I'm going to, let's try and do this, that I will ask you one by one the different questions. Yeah, so we'll start with the first one maybe. The people want to know more about this plant-based strategy, and what does it include? What kind of actions? So, what forms of activism and action do you recommend for a just transformation of the food system?
Yeah, so thanks a lot, and thanks also for the inputs from my colleagues here. But for the action plan, we all still have to wait a bit. I know a lot of people, we're really excited about to see it as well. And I know there are journalists around the world waiting to know it, because it's, of course, an interesting case story. The thing is, we have something called a national action plan for plant-based foods. Of course, in itself, that's somehow powerful, but it can still be a pretty empty piece of paper. It really depends what is actually written there. And the delicate balance that we're yet to see is what will actually be there. But what we do know is that it will be a document of probably like 35 pages or so. It has been through several ministries with collaboration across the ministries, anything from research to education, to a variety of things. So at the very minimum, it's definitely a document listing a lot of different kinds of actions. What we don't know is if it will actually include new actions. It will just kind of list things that are already, a summary of things that are already being done. And of course, we would like new actions to be there, but even if it's a summary of everything being done, it's still quite unique to have people from all across the government, from all the ministries, to collaborate on this and to talk to each other, because that's one of the things we've been told, that they're not used to talk about this together between the different, whether it's the finance or the health and the environmental and the food and agriculture ministry, so that and education ministry. So that in itself is actually really positive. I think we're still to see how we'll react to it when we see it. Because again, if we're disappointed, we have to show that we're disappointed. But on the other hand, it's unique that they've done it, and it is a really good start. So let's see. We will know very soon, and I promise we will invite for a webinar or something internationally and tell more about it once we have it. But I really don't know more at the moment. But the other question you asked was a more general one, of course. Yeah, right.
Maybe let me ask another question. So you mentioned, this need for talking with various groups of people, and I actually have two questions for that. Do you think there are certain stakeholders, actors who will never become allies of the food system repair? Who are they? And do you think there's anything we can do to bring them on board? And the second question, I think, is related to what you mentioned earlier about sometimes the need to, be moderate or to present your arguments differently. Do you think while being moderate, you can still be honest and just for, the animal welfare issue?
Yeah, I'll take your last question first. I guess that's easiest for me in that way. So here, while we are generally seen as a friendly and pragmatic organization, we do have a lawsuit where we have sued Danish Crown, the largest pork producer here, and also Europe's largest pork exporter. Sorry, not Europe's largest pork exporter, not producer. But so we have a lawsuit on them on greenwashing, and of course, some people have seen that as a kind of a little aggressive move, but we have talked about it in a very sober way, saying this is just a lawsuit. It happens in the courts. Take it easy. So generally, the opinion is that it's a fair and reasonable lawsuit. That's actually interesting for everyone to know what is the limit according to the law. What can you actually say and not say? But can you call your pigs climate controlled or not? So that's of course. So yeah, no, I think there are definitely, we still have a kind of more classic activist or moves or lawsuit moves. There's still space for that as well. I just think that depending on the profile of the organization, and in many countries, I would argue, you need some organization to be the one that tries to bring everyone together. If you have different organizations in the country, maybe some can play a more classic activist role and others, but there should be someone who brings people to the table in each country. I do think that is really, really important. Yeah, and then the other question about if there are some people that we cannot get on board that can never, that's a really, really nice question, because I think in theory, all groups can become allies. But like most people within the groups, so like most farmers could be allies, but there will be some farmers who will never be, of course. But within the group of farmers as such, in theory, most could be. I think an interesting example, which is really kind of stretching it a bit, even to I don't know if it goes beyond my comfort zone as well, but there are pig farmers who are saying, they're kind of joking with it, but they're also serious about it. They're saying, as long as I earn enough money selling my pork selling my pigs to pork meat, that gives me more money I can invest in transitioning towards more plants. So don't kind of kill my business too quickly, because then I won't have the money to do a transition. Then you'll just have nothing. That's a kind of provoking argument, but I kind of have a point, but it's also frustrating unless you, of course, have governments or someone else stepping in with the finance. If you want to transition a system, someone has to pay. If the governments don't pay or private investors don't pay, the farmers somehow have to pay. But so that's kind of what I'm feeling like in that argument is, how can you say it? The fact that they can say that there are animal producers who really feel they're born to produce animals. And for those, it's really difficult to make that transition. But there are also farmers who are saying, I'll produce whatever I can sell, and they're open towards it. And of course, there's a generation thing here again. It's actually interesting what you told from Switzerland, those data. I think are very interesting. The Danish data we have every year, we make a representative survey together with the largest supermarket chain here. We've made it for 7 years in a row. So we have really comparable data year on year. And the divide between young and older people is growing really fast and really big here, actually. And that is both in terms of what people are saying they're eating. Sometimes you say something and you still do something else. But at least what people are saying they're eating, that difference is really growing big. But also the products people have said they have tried in the supermarket, there are some huge differences, like factor 10 between the younger and the older people of what products they have tried. and then also their opinions on the responsibilities of politicians. There's some major generational gaps here. What kind of interventions they find acceptable.
Okay, I think we've lost Rune for a moment. I hope he'll be back later. I did want to tie in with something he mentioned.
But there's some
sorry, Rune,
go ahead.
We lost you for a moment.
Oh, that's strange. Sorry. Am I here again?
Yes, you're here again.
I'm really sorry about that.
If you want to finish your sentence.
Yeah, how long was I gone? Just for a few seconds, or?
Yes, about 10 seconds, I think.
All right. Yeah. So basically, again, I think most sectors can be engaged, but there are some sectors that are really difficult. For example, I do think that a lot of doctors are really, really heavy. That's burdensome to get them on board, but we need them on board. It's fabulous what you're doing, George, with your hospital, inspiring a lot of people. We held a conference for health professionals earlier this year, and there were many participants, and they were very happy about it. But again, you never know. We probably attracted those who were somehow open towards it. So the question is, how do we get to the other 10,000 or 20,000 health professionals, apart from the first 200? But I guess everything starts with a drop in the ocean. And I do have a deep, deep belief, despite, you might say, all the shit that's happening around the world from one time to another, all the challenges, all the suffering of humans and animals. I do still have a very strong belief in what can be done by human beings, being inspired by talking to each other. And I do think we still have to keep believing in the dialogue, even with groups that we somehow can't imagine. There's usually a way into them, but maybe we just need several years to find out how to get through to that group.
Thank you, Rune, for that input. I was also actually asked a question, even though I'm the moderator, and it ties into what you were talking about. I actually think it's funny that you hear the same argument from meat producers as we in the fossil fuel energy transition NGOs hear from the coal sector, or generally from the fossil fuel sectors, which is that you guys have to give us time. In order to transition, we need money. So just let us go on for a little while longer, and then we will move on. So, and at the same time, of course, coal, like meat production, is extremely subsidized by countries. And the question I was asked is, what kind of advice I can give for food system transition. I don't think I'm hearing pretty much the same things that I would put forward. And I would like to highlight what Rune said a moment ago, which is that you have to have different organizations working in different ways, working on different aspects of the issue. So you need organizations that are doing educational activities. You need ones that are doing lawsuits. You need ones that are doing, policy and legislation work. You need some that are networking. Sometimes this can be done by one organization, but it's a lot of work. You also need people pushing forward a more radical message, and those, like Rune said, sitting down at the table and talking with a large variety of different stakeholders with different opinions, and bringing them to the table on a specific matter, so that you can change legislation slowly, step by step, and move forward. And this does work. It's taking a bit, but I think it is speeding up. So thank you. I think that's really a moment where the different climate work, animal welfare work is coming together, finding ways in which we can also cooperate on specific issues. I'm going to move on to Joana. Joana, you also have a question, so I'm going to go right into that one and then ask you a separate one that I have pre-prepared. So you joined AVP with a pretty impressive business background. So can you tell us what brought you, took you into the NGO world? I'm actually not surprised, because I know a lot of people right now that are moving into more value-based work, for example, in NGOs. But it would be great to hear from you. Where did this passion and need come from?
Well, I was have been vegan for almost all my life, since my teenagehood, and the thing, well, when I started working in my fields, because I'm from economics field, and I started working in companies, I realized that what I was doing didn't match my values. And because I was volunteering already, sometimes I was helping activists on some specific activities, aside my work. I decided that I should, but very briefly, I decided that I should just quit my job and start looking for something that I could work full time on what I was really into doing. So this was basically waking up one day, realizing that we have to have a meeting, and sometimes if we spend 8 hours working to something that doesn't help to achieve what you believe for, it doesn't matter to do what you are doing. So that's, that was it. It was kind of clash between what I believed and what I was professionally doing. So that's the reason that I find the opportunity to enroll with the Portuguese Vegetarian Association, and I've been working hard since I work here.
Yes, thank you. I think that probably resonates with a lot of people, because I am really seeing that a lot of people are deciding that their job is not in line with their values, and that they, want to move into something that is closer to what they want to see changed in the world. So my next question is that, you convinced the UN Secretary General to switch to a plant-based diet. You changed legislation for a mandatory vegan option in public institutions in Portugal. What do you think are the effective and less effective ways to make a difference on people's plates?
So we need to make a small disclaimer to begin with. We didn't convince the Secretary General of the United Nations, António Guterres, to switch to a plant-based diet. We didn't convince him, but the best we did was having his advisors say they would show him a open letter. So that was an accomplishment, I guess. To be honest, I don't know the diet of António Guterres, but that's if someone knows, please tell me. But just to give you a quick context, in 2021, the Portuguese Vegetarian Association, the Vegan Society, the European Vegetarian Union, along with politicians, journalists, actors, singers, and other organizations, signed an open letter calling on António Guterres to adopt a vegan diet. For those who doesn't know, António Guterres is Portuguese. And so we challenged him to adopt this vegan diet as part of the Plead for Planet campaign. So this campaign was widely recognized by the press, which is quite important when it comes to lobbying, and ended up raising global awareness about the benefits of a plant-based diet. So about the mandatory vegan option in public canteens, it all started when the Portuguese Vegetarian Association began a campaign in 2015 to address the limited offer of vegetarian food in public canteens. And the campaign led to the launch of a petition advocating for strict vegetarian options in public canteens, including schools, universities, hospitals, and prisons. It gained large support from citizens, both vegetarians and non-vegetarians, and it led to discussions in Parliament. So the law that mandates the inclusion of at least one strict vegetarian option in public canteens was approved and implemented in 2017. It's now in place in Portugal, just to give you a context. And and this is the first part of the question. So what these activities have in common is that they are appealing for both vegetarians and non-vegetarians. So they are relatable and regarding the mandatory vegan option in public canteens in Portugal and the law that we have in place, despite there's a lot of work to still be done, but related to the quality of this meal. But what they have, the strength they have is that they are focused on inclusion. So all people, almost all people can eat a vegetarian option or a vegan option, and this is they promote an environmentally friendly meal, but also a meal that everyone can, almost everyone can eat. So what, considering, now the second part of the question, considering effective and less effective ways to make a difference on people's plates. So, well, adapt your communication is very important. We have to change the way we speak, considering the person that is listening to us, public. And, as Philipp Ryf said, it's also very important to tell positive stories regarding to that. It's very important to, education and awareness campaigns are crucial. For instance, promoting the plant-based diets through educational campaigns, as we have seen on the campaign targeting António Guterres. But also public pressure and petitions can have some effect because mobilizing public support through petitions of social media or online campaigns can demonstrate demand for plant-based options. And of course, having an impact on the legislation is very effective. It ensures the access to the plant-based options and normalize, it's very important, normalize the plant-based food. A whole 100% plant-based food, 100% plant-based plate, and among others, it's important to consider food environments, and food environments encompass the physical, economic, political, and sociocultural context in which individuals engage with the food system. So it's important to know. Marketing and availability information, price of the food, advertising of the food, redesigning food environments. It's crucial. By redesigning them, we can foster a transition towards a greater consumption of plant-based foods. And we also believe in labeling. It's very important. If we have a clear sustainability and animal welfare labeling of food on food products, this will allow consumers to make informed choices, because consumers they do not want to eat something that is not good for environment or is not, it's cruel for the animals. They want to eat something that will leave them in peace. But sometimes they simply don't know what they are eating. So clear labeling is very, very important to make a difference on people's plates. And of course, also celebrity and influencer endorsement, because this changes public perception and behavior. Creation of appealing plant-based dishes, because creating recipes and promoting new plant-based flavors, everyone likes it, and they actually, because sometimes we see that happening a lot here in Portugal. People think that plant-based food doesn't taste good, basically, and we need to show them the opposite. And also very important, collaborating with retailers and the food industry, because they have this huge marketing and economic power, and actually legislative power also. So partnering with them to promote plant-based products help us to expand the range of tasty options available to consumers.
Sometimes we are doing this through another project that we are developing. Sometimes they just need help, just need advice. How can we can attract this target, this veggie people target? And also, as I said previously, collaboration with like-minded organizations, experts, and universities are very important, increasing credibility for the media, public, and policymakers. The partnership can create a ripple effect, driving changes from legislation and the eating habits. So I don't know if I have much time. So regarding less effective ways, we do believe that shaming and guilt tripping may not be effective. Like shaming individuals for their dietary choices, no one likes it. No one will hear what you have to say next if you start by shaming them. So you need to be careful about that. And ignoring cultural differences, we here in Portugal we have a very cultural resistance, and so important to adapt, to get that gradually, keeping cultural, adapting dishes to the traditional plates. Adapting traditional plates can be plant-based as well, even if you have meat. So yeah, ignoring cultural considerations may not be effective as well. So we need to have health in mind, and I'll say that we need to address this inconvenience. So failure to address that is not an effective way. So basically that's it.
Thank you very much, Joana. We do have a question also later for how to engage minorities. So on this topic and this inclusiveness of the discussion. So we'll come back to that later because I think it ties in well with what you talked about. Let's move on for now to Georges, and then I'll come back to the rest of you with some additional questions we have. So Georges, you operate on the streets and in a hospital, so in very diverse circumstances. You talked a lot about what you've been doing in the hospital previously in terms of animal rights and mostly veganism. So can you tell us a little bit more about how this also translates into what you do with helping people on the streets as well? And what do you see as your greatest successes, but also your greatest challenges in the work that you've been doing?
Yes, of course. So what we do actually at the Lebanese Vegan Social Hub is that we offer on a daily basis plant-based vegan ready-made meals for the community. And every Thursday, we have a group of activists, dedicated activists who come over the hub and collect food, collect blankets, toys for children. And they visit poor areas in Beirut where people are living under bridges, homeless people. And we try to help them as much as possible without hurting the animals, of course, because I really think it's absurd to be helping someone at the detriment of someone else, because we truly believe that animals are someone, not something. So yeah, feeding the community with plant-based food, helping them try to undergo the struggles that they are going through. This is quite essential for us because we as vegans, we truly believe that we are not just here to be talking about animals, but to all sentient beings that are being oppressed, whether human animals or non-human animals. So our job is to show everyone, because there's this misconception that we only care about animals, where it's not true at all. We care about every person, every human being, every sentient being that is in a difficult situation, that is being oppressed by some superior species or some superior person or whatever. So this is what we try to do at the Hub. Of course, we do organize as well events where we invite speakers to educate the community on the importance of animal rights. more than animal welfare, because I believe that by focusing on animal welfare, we tend to lose our main focus is to end animal exploitation. Because I personally think that animal welfarism is more of trying to do the wrong thing in the right way, which we can never achieve that. In my personal and humble opinion, if we stick to our message, let it be clear that consuming animal is wrong for all the reasons that we might think of. First of all, from the ethical reason, killing animal is completely wrong, where we can thrive and survive very well on a plant-based diet. And here I would like to stress on a point. I truly believe if we all work together as activists and NGOs on pushing the message that meat is not essential for us humans to thrive and survive and to be in good health, and stress on this point as this starting base for any kind of argument that we're going to have, it would be much easier for us to forward the message. Because a lot of people, including myself, before turning vegetarian and then vegan, I thought, because I got educated in school and universities, that listen, meat equals protein and protein equals meat. Same goes to milk and calcium. You know, whenever you think about calcium, you think about milk. This is because we've been programmed and brainwashed to think this way. So if we all stress on the fact that meat is not a necessity for us to live in a healthy way, there goes the crime towards the animals, towards the environment, because as we know very well that animal agriculture is the #1 impactor of climate change, and so on and so forth, not to mention all the diseases and zoonotic diseases that we've experienced throughout our history. So stressing on the point that meat is not a necessity, and then we can move forward and show exactly the atrocities that is happening behind slaughterhouses walls. And other than this, I would like to mention that it's obvious that our system is broken. When today we are able to breed and to feed and to slaughter more than 80 billion land animals every year, and we all know that not long ago the population of the earth turned 8 billion. And we all know as well that more than 1 billion people are hungry and starving and are dying of starvation. When we weirdly enough have enough feed and food to feed those 80 billion animals, it's obvious that our system is broken. It's obvious that it's an urgent appeal to change. I really don't think so that we have enough time for animal welfarism when we all know that we are heading into the 6th mass extinction, when we all know that in 2050 we're going to be faced with the fishless ocean. So it's not something that we should take it slightly or lightly. We should be true to ourselves, true to what we are heading to, and true to the person that we're trying to convince. Because the challenges, because you asked me what are the challenges, I believe that having a lenient approach toward this urgent matter is giving the impression to the person that is trying, that is sitting in front of you, that listen, okay, it's an injustice, it's something wrong, but you know what, maybe you can take it as a 2nd-degree injustice, and this might hurt much more than we might think. Knowing that we all have good intentions, whether it's in animal rights or in animal welfarism, we all have good intentions. We want to end animal exploitation, but it's like the approach that we are undergoing. I can give a small example. You barely see anyone walking at the streets and wearing fur jackets, right? Why? Not because we tried to talk to them in a nice way, listen, it's wrong to. No, it was some kind of shaming and guilt tripping that, listen, what you are doing is completely wrong. And now no one would dare wear a fur jacket because they're going to be shamed and guilt tripped in the streets. And it was easier for us to convince like those people to stop wearing fur, because we all know that wearing a jacket is not a necessity for us to thrive and survive. But going back to what I started with, that by focusing on the fact that meat is not a necessity, there goes the crime towards the animals, there goes the crime towards our environment, and there goes the crime towards our health, of course.
Thank you for I think a different approach than some of our speakers today have brought forward, but I think a very important voice. Yeah, I think we should come back to this question. I'm going to ask one more question to Philipp, and then I'm going to let you sort of with shorter answers, try and answer some of the more vibrant issues that have come up today. So Philipp, there's been a lot of interest in the questions in your comments on how the referendum went and the data that you had from there. So one of the questions is about which arguments appealed most to the women and which to the group of men within the referendum, and whether you even have this data. What arguments were most common against the closing of factory farms? I mean, I think it's there's an interest in what the meat lobby did and how did they build their campaign against your proposal.
Right. So let me start with the arguments against our initiative. So basically, I guess due to the fact that Switzerland does have rather comparably good animal welfare standards, the main argument was just that Switzerland doesn't have factory farms. That's it. That was the main argument. And that worked pretty well, actually, because like I said, I mean, many people in Switzerland have a very skewed image of how farming is done in our country. And we do have the good example, so to speak, because due to the fact that we have a lot of mountainous regions, we do see a lot of cows, a lot of cattle grazing there. So people do have that in their mind. I mean, there's always the same reasons, right? It's prices. Meat would become more expensive. Poor people wouldn't, or economically poor people wouldn't be able to afford meat anymore. There was a big argument about imports, even though we did have an import clause in our initiative, but they still. So it was funny because we did have an import clause in our initiative, and they both said because of the import clause we wouldn't have any meat left in Switzerland. But at the same time, they said it wouldn't be enforceable anyway, and it would we would be flooded with even worse meat from abroad. So a lot of misinformation, a lot of arguments that didn't really make sense. But obviously our opponents had much more money, so they were able to have so many billboards with false messaging that it kind of worked in the end anyway. When it comes to specific arguments in gender, I'm not aware of any study that looked at that. So I wouldn't know for sure. However, I mean, what I can tell you is that we did have several measures that we proposed as part of our initiative, and some of those work better than others. So one measure that actually even almost half of the opponents were in favor of was just that every animal should be able to go outside. This was quite a popular measure. So this is something that I think we can build on. And it's also something that very clearly aligns with our kind of national identity of how Switzerland looks and how animals are raised in our country. There were some other arguments that really didn't work. For example, pen size, because, and I mean, I tend to agree to some degree, whether you have 27,000 chickens in a barn or whether you have 10,000 chickens in a barn or whether you have 2,000 chickens in a barn, in the end, it doesn't make much of a difference. So this was something that didn't work as well. Yeah, but I don't have the data on gender specifically. What I can say is that we very consciously tried to have female ambassadors, so to speak, as well. We also consciously tried to have female farmers that also did videos for our initiative. And I would assume that that was also something that appealed to a lot of women, that we actually portrayed women actually working in the agricultural sector, and that we had a lot of female ambassadors for our initiative.
Thank you, Philip. I'm actually going to go right back to what Georges said a moment ago, also in relation to what you're saying, because a lot of the arguments that you're putting forward is very much linked to, let's say, the animal welfare sort of approach. Here, Georges was saying, we have to talk about animal rights, that meat is not a necessity, and suggesting that we need to radicalize the discussion. From Joana and from Rune, we also heard, that it depends who you're talking to, that sometimes you need to use different arguments with different groups. So I'm going to go back to this question. How do you see the statement by Georges that meat is not that you need to push the argument that meat is not a necessity, and that you need to maintain like this strong approach to the issue? And I think I'll let each of you sort of answer, but very short answers this time. Let's try to keep it down to 2 minutes. So let's go the way we were going so far. So let's start off this round with Rune.
Yeah, no, I really very much agree with Georges' point. I do think that fundamental message that it is not necessary is extremely important to address. And that also means that, health, nutrition, evolution notions are something we have to discuss. There are different ideas about what a human body is and what the human evolution was and not was, etc. So some of these debates are very fundamental. I think there's a reason why The Game Changers was such a popular and successful movie, because that tackled these things head on, really. Going into immediately just through a very few images, you kind of erased a lot of myths. So that was very effective, and maybe we just need even more of that. It's not the whole world hasn't seen it yet, and maybe some people forgot it again. so I can just say that it was effective here, and I think a lot of the who were difficult to get on board for animal ethical reasons or environment and climate, they are still susceptible to the health messages. We also think that particularly to target males, we might use some of the same stuff as in Game Changers, which plays on both ideas of strong men and sports, but also on even male sexuality, things like that. That might be very effective.
Joana?
Well, I have to agree with George regarding the direct message that we have to pass. The thing is, and I believe the thing is the way you communicate the truth, because it's a fact that we have. There's each day a new study comes out telling us that meat consumption will lead to climate disaster, and even official institutions are declaring declaring that meat is linked to several diseases, and including antibiotic resistance, besides the one that I mentioned earlier related to red meat. And so we can approach the person that is in front of us, telling the truth, but telling the truth the way they would like to hear. So these are the facts, and so you can make the change because there are a lot of benefits, and it's not like we inventing something, or it's not like we asking someone to do the impossible, because we can show that, again, the positive list, it's much more larger, it's huge, and so many celebrities now getting to the thing of the male, the thing that, it have to be strong and protein and so on. There's celebrities that are, athletes that are vegan. So we need to show people and policymakers and food industry and farmers, that there are another world out there that is actually better. And regarding farmers, just very quick, and they have, like Rune-Christoffer said, some farmers are very stick to what they are doing, but this, public policies can also have something to do with that regarding redirecting incentives. So, we just have the money, we're just using the money the wrong way. So we need to get the money to promote, alternative proteins instead the production of animal origin products. So, well, it's not like we're not saying the truth. We're saying the truth, and like George said, we need to address things like they are, because that's how people are actually convinced. Okay, we're doing that because we have a lot of studies that back up what we are defending. But then we have to show them that economic opportunities are rising. There's a lot of economic opportunities. It's not something that we do not need to deny that. It's very it's playing in our favor. So it's that's it.
Thank you, Joana. I think also, you mentioned earlier that there's in your messaging, you try to use a lot of positive imaging and you like positive stories. And we've seen the same, like in the climate discussion, that if you put out too much negative information, if you put out too much guilt shaming, about what kind of life you lead, it can lead to people turning off from listening to you at all. Like, people just blocking because it's too much to bear. And I'm not saying this is an argument, but there are, there are different approaches to this. Let's say in the energy in energy activism, some people say, we have to be blunt, we have to say where we're at. Others saying, we need to soften the message because otherwise, half of the community is turning off. And I think this, there are arguments for and against both of this. I'm going to let George answer last because, this was sort of, an issue he raised, and he brought this, I think, very interesting discussion to our table. So I'd like Philipp to come in because, as someone who also works on similar things like you, like trying to present a difficult topic to people who are very often not very much on board, and we talk about how to present it, to the people out there. We make different choices that are sometimes, not always what we think is the most important even argument within a discussion. So how do you see this question in terms of the kind of campaign that you did? And like you said, it was quite a successful campaign because you were expecting 25%, you achieved 37%. Do you think that this was helped by the way you messaged, and would you radicalize it the next time?
Well, it really depends what you're trying to achieve, and I think there are many different routes to go, and we need all the different messages, I think. So maybe let me start with the notion that, obviously, from a personal standpoint, I very much agree with George in the sense that I think we should definitely move away from animal products as a whole, and meat is very much unnecessary. And actually very harmful for many different reasons. However, I would maybe phrase it in a different way when it comes to our work, because I think what we found is that when you look at, obviously you need to have positive messages, but as a starting point, you have to look at the problem. And if you look at the problem, actually there are a lot of allies that are very much not. That they don't have the same vision, but they have the same understanding of the problem. And that includes, for example, farmers that produce meat themselves, but just produce it in a very different way. And it's always a question of how big do you want your alliance to be versus how strong and how radical do you want your messaging to be. And I don't have an answer for that. I very much agree with George's notion, but at the same time, I found that for our initiative, it was really crucial to have progressive farmers on our side. and we would have lost them if we would have been more radical. So we very much tried to steer away from the discussion of whether meat as a whole should be outlawed, and we tried to focus on the problem of factory farms. So in that sense, I think progressive farmers can be part of the solution, even if in the end, if we get to the point where we have solved the first 90% of the way, and then we'll become enemies, or then we'll become opponents, and then we'll talk about the last 10%. But I do see the other way of going about it as well, and especially when you go directly to the consumer, I think you can be more radical versus when you go to the politicians, for example, you have to be very willing to compromise.
Yeah, thank you for that. I've also found in my work that you sometimes find very surprising allies for a specific thing that you're doing. I mean, we've cooperated with coal miners, and we've had very, very productive discussions with them, working together, in fact, on energy transition. So this shows that sometimes you might find very surprising alliances on very specific issues, while on other topics you won't be able to have a conversation at all because your objectives are completely divergent. I mean, this is mostly in policy work, of course. Georges, I'm going to give the floor to you because, you raised this discussion, you brought it to our, attention. So how do you feel about the answers that you've heard?
Well, first of all, I agree with everyone, because at the end of the day, each and every one of us got affected in a certain way and is trying to promote it the way he got affected. So I respect everyone's opinion, and I truly believe that the good intentions are there to end exploitation. Now, the only thing that differs between us, maybe it's the way. Personally, I believe that a change never comes whenever you are sitting in your comfort zone. It's when your comfort zone is shaken and disturbed and deranged. This is when change happens. This is when you will be triggered to do your own research and come up with a conclusion. I mean, if we only promote the way we will promote it as friends, not food, for example, it's a positive message, but I don't think it's quite effective. People will not be shaken from the inside and might find this post or this, let's say, approach cute, but will go back home and go back to eating animal again. It's when you trigger them. It's when you put them in an uncomfortable situation, when you know that you are not talking to them to make a friend out of them, but to be true to them first. I mean, we are not here as activists to be liked. We are here to forward the cruelty and the unnecessary damage that we are doing to our planet. We only have one planet. Let's try to make the best out of it. And especially that, as I mentioned before, we do not have the luxury to be soft on this specific urgent matter. I mean, if we were talking about something else that will not impact our future existence, well, maybe I would adapt a more lenient approach. But then again, being true to ourselves and true to the person that we're talking to, maybe in the first approach he will find it offensive in a way, but he will go back home and he'll have the seed planted in him, and he'll have the curiosity to dig more on the specific matter. And then something else I would like to mention, throughout my activism, more than 10 years today, I figured something that as much as you try to educate people or try to make them care, it's not a matter of how or what argument you should use. More of there are people who cares and people who don't care. It's as simple as that. You can spend hours and hours and days and years try to talk to someone, try to tell him that, listen, animal agriculture is responsible for this and that and this and that. and he might not be affected. Whereas another person, you just sit with him for a couple of hours, providing him with sufficient arguments, and those people will care, because once you tell them that, listen, what we are inflicting to the animals is completely cruel and unnecessary, what we're doing to our planet is stupid, what we are losing our health, our parents, our friends, with the cancers, with diabetes, with all kinds of deadly diseases. Those people will care and will change their approach and will change their lifestyle. So I came into a conclusion that I will no longer spend my energy and my time talking to people who I know that even if I present all the arguments that the world can present, those people will never change, for the very simple reason they don't care. They don't care about what's happening to the animals. They don't care about our future in this planet, and they don't care about their health neither. So my focus and my energy got depleted, because first, when I started my activism, I used to try to convince those people who eventually and obviously never changed. I figured out that my time is precious and my energy is precious as well. Try to talk to people who are ready to listen to the message and who cares, basically.
Thank you, Georges. We have a comment. Unfortunately, I don't know who sent the comment, so I can't, but I will read it. So as an activist, I think that we are not winning, we are losing, but it's also about how you want to lose. We need to understand and accept that we need to lose, saying a clear message that we will have solidarity for all animals. And I think this is something that we as activists in the climate movement generally, working on different aspects, feel sometimes that the change is not coming fast enough. That we are, working our asses off. I don't know if I can say that online, but I just did. We're working our asses off trying to, bring change about. It's really hard work. We're dealing with a lot of challenges. We're dealing with a lot of difficulties. We do feel sometimes that we're losing. We sometimes don't know whether we should radicalize our message, what we need to do, to get people to understand where we're at in the climate struggle and in the situation of animal rights. So it's something that definitely affects all of us. And I think Georges is also mentioning this in what he said a moment ago, that at a certain point you realize there are some people you'll never reach. But I think also all of your stories show a more positive side, that you have all managed to achieve a lot in your fields. So we have the last minutes, and I'd like you to really shortly tell me, who do you think will be, the activists in the next 10, 20 years? Who will bring about change, and how do we speed it up? Rune.
So do you mean politicians or farmers or health professionals when you're saying who, a group, or? I
don't know. I mean, I think it might be, I think we're, with Joana, moving from the business world. I'm seeing this, across the board. People moving from sectors completely different from the activism, the coming in here and doing their stuff. I think it can be farmers. I think it can be politicians. What do you see? Have you seen any change in who's coming into activism in recent years?
Yeah, I still see you have these beautiful, I would say most of the cases I can say, let's say from the world of politics, for example, in Denmark, those who have really made a big change. One of them is a guy who kind of almost overnight became very convinced vegan for the animals. But his key to success in politics is that he's honest and true to his beliefs, but he knows very, very well how to get pragmatic deals to actually negotiate. And he'll make some sacrifices on the way to get things that he would get nothing. So he's deeply, deeply convinced. He's very honest about he's saying, this is why I could not save all the animals tonight. But he explains that, and then he explains what he did get. So that's a guy who just got convinced by, I think, watching some videos or something like that. And then another example, another politician who for many years felt like this whole agricultural food thing and vegans and vegetarians were annoying. Then we gave her a book about the health benefits of a plant-based diet. We gave it to her when she was participating in a debate. And then 1 year later, she sent me a picture of that book saying it was lying on her night table. And she said, now I read the book and now I'm convinced. And now she's a very powerful force in one of our biggest parties here. So I think there are different ways, and she has insisted that it was our very pragmatic and friendly way that was so important for her to open up her heart, while the other guy got convinced by animal rights arguments. So I think there are different paths to this, and that's why predicting the future, I really think the activists who will make the difference will be those who are deeply convinced, but who knows how to play also strategically and do things in the level of speed where others can follow them.
Thank you, Rune. Joana, what about you? What do you think might be something that we can take away from today about how we need to be active, what actions we need, who we need to talk to, and who's changing?
Well, I have to be honest. There's when you first asked this question a few minutes ago, I tried to think about one person. There are so many groups that are doing so much, and I believe that we have more and more people feeling that animals have a voice. So we have more children saying no to meat each day, and it's something that it feels like organically we get into a point where people, it seems like society is moving to a way where more people are understanding that meat is not, it's something that we can reject and still live and be happy and even more happier. So I guess this movement on society, since especially when it comes to developed countries, people, most people are not close to factory farms, or they're not close to the farm animals, so they simply don't realize what is happening. But once they do, because of the globalization in internet, and because of the activists, especially because of the activists, they start seeing that animals have feelings and they actually have cognitive capacities. So I guess we're getting into this society movement, but still there's a lot of things that we need to address and a lot of work to be done. And like the comment just pointed out, we may be losing. So when you ask the question, I have to be honest, and I thought about cellular agriculture and cultivated meat because that's something that suddenly came out, and it's something that is promised to make the difference at some point. Probably not now, especially in Europe, but at some point, and it leaves that doubt in all of us. So if there's something changing, well, that's the news. That's the news at the present moment, right?
Right. Thank you, Joana. I'm going to give the last two voices to Philipp and Georges. Actually, I'll start with Georges. We really don't have a lot of time, so let's try and, because we are in the last few minutes, okay? Georges, what about you? How do you answer this question?
Yes. I personally think the next activist that would make a difference is the person that you'll be able to convince to change his lifestyle, because we can never know to whom we're talking to, and we can never know the impact that we're making on this person, and this person, if he ever changes, the impact that this specific person can make to the world. I mean, personally, from a simple slaughter video that really annoyed me first. Well, I turned myself vegan. I created an NGO, and then I created the very first vegan hospital because I am fortunate enough to be owning a hospital. So who knows, the person that you're trying to convince might be able to change in his line of business and will able to make this ripple effect. So the next activist is the person that you guys are trying to convince, in my opinion.
Thank you, Georges. I think that's a very strong message. Philipp, the final word is yours from the panelists. Go ahead.
Wow, what pressure. So maybe I want to be a bit less optimistic when it comes to activism in a very narrow sense. I do think we need to collaborate much more. We need to collaborate across the aisle. I do think there are a lot of positive tipping points that we can hopefully achieve. I do think it's hard work. I do think it's not given that we will get there. But I do think we need to work towards those positive tipping points, and we won't get there without politics. We won't get there without the industry. We won't get there without retailers. So we do have to work with them, and we do have to try to gear our messaging in the right way to really be able to get them on board. I do think there's a very strong case to be made that we need also a lot of radical activists on the side. I'm not saying that this is not something that we shouldn't do, but I do think that we need to get much more into politics. We need to be. I think maybe to kind of close the circle, going back to what Rune said at the beginning, that we need to really be part of the center of society. We can't be a fringe movement if we want to achieve the change that we want. So just speak to whoever is willing to listen and try to collaborate with as many people as possible.
I think that gave us a great overview of all of the messages that we've heard today. I really enjoyed this debate. I think it was a very strong debate with a lot of important messages and a really clear discussion of, the different positions that we have as organizations working in different fields. So it was a great pleasure to be able to moderate this session. Thank you very much for your participation. To Rune, Joana, Georges, Philipp, it was really, really interesting talking to you. And I hope, we have this opportunity again to talk in future. So thanking you on behalf of GreenRev Institute. Thank you also to all those who were in the audience and who gave us so many interesting questions and comments. It was great to be here, and I look forward to seeing you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, because we're just finishing off the European Vegan Summit 2023. Dear guests, dear experts, dear participants and viewers, on behalf of GreenRev Institute and the entire team behind the European Vegan Summit 2023, I want to extend my gratitude to each and every one of you for your participation and engagement in our event. The European Vegan Summit is not just a conference, it is a platform for change, a gathering of minds committed to a better, more sustainable future for all. And we are honored to have had the privilege of hosting such a diverse and passionate group of individuals and organizations dedicated to animal rights, climate action, human rights, and the food system transition. At GreenRev Institute, we firmly believe that the future of our planet and the well-being of all its inhabitants depend on a shift towards a more compassionate and sustainable way of living and eating. Through the European Vegan Summit, we aim to bring together experts, leaders, activists, and of course advocates who are driving this transformative change forward.
The European Vegan Summit would not have been possible without the dedication and hard work of our organizing team, as well as the generous support of our sponsors and partners. Together, we have created a space where ideas are cultivated, knowledge is shared, and alliances are formed to drive positive change. As we reflect on the summit's achievements, we are filled with a renewed sense of purpose and hope. The seeds of change that have been sown here will continue to grow, and we look forward to witnessing the fruits of our collective labor in days, months, and years to come. Once again, thank you for your commitment, passion, and dedication. Together, we are shaping a future that is not only better for ourselves, but also for the generations that will follow. If you have any feedback, suggestions, or would like to stay connected with Green Ref Institute and our initiatives, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. Your input is invaluable as we continue our journey towards a more compassionate and sustainable world. Thank you for being a part of the European Vegan Summit 2023, and we look forward to crossing paths with you again in our shared mission for a brighter future. Thank you.